dollhouse actually was. But I guess the police just didn't even acknowledge to look inside the dollhouse because it's a dollhouse. So they didn't find him. My cousins were there though because one of them like can remember it to a T, like everything that had happened. Um, and it's actually kind of funny. I mean, I know it's sad at the same time that the police are looking for him, but that wasn't anything new. Um, but who hides in a dollhouse? Like I don't. But it worked. So, um, I remember when my dad was living in the trailer. Um, we were up visiting for the summer, and my mom was coming to get us, and she had came into the house, and my dad and his friends and everybody from wherever was there, and I guess they were snorting lines of coke or smoking crack or something. My mom seen it, and she asked my dad to step outside on the porch, and I'm a mama's girl, always have been. So of course, after not seeing my mom for a short amount of time, like when she would come and pick us up or we would go back, like I was always super excited to see her, and I would not let her out of my sight. So I went onto the porch with them, and she's, yelling at him, asking him, like, what the fuck are you doing? My kids are in this house, and you're in here with all your drug buddies, and y'all are drinking and doing drugs in front of my kids, like, and he acted like nothing that he was doing was wrong. And he had a beer bottle in his hand. And my mom took the beer bottle out of his hand, and she broke it onto the porch, and she was like holding it. And she's like, I will fucking kill you. And his girlfriend came out of the house, and it was like all hell broke loose then. I was screaming and crying. Everybody that was there, all of my dad's friends and stuff, they all decided to just dip out and leave. Someone called the police. You could hear the sirens, and my mom and my dad's girlfriend were just, it was like World War III in the yard. Like it was, things were being thrown, clothes were being ripped off, hair was being ripped out. My mom was a fighter. Like, she kind of still is, actually, when she needs to be, I guess. But I remember the police and everything come in, and I remember my mom trying to put us in the car. My brother didn't want to go. And the police told her that if he didn't want to go, he didn't have to. So that's the time that my brother actually moved in with my father and lived with him. And of course, I definitely went back home to my mommy. I remember when my dad and his brother came to the house in Burkeville one time. My mom's boyfriend was there, and my aunt, my mom, my dad, my uncle. Obviously, I was there because I remember it, but I don't really remember seeing any other kids. And when my dad pulled up, like his brother was a hothead. So was my mom's boyfriend. So I guess they felt the need to act like children and put on a show for everyone in the neighborhood to see. My dad's brother got out of the truck, and my mom's boyfriend come out of the house, and they had words. And next thing I know, my aunt's trying to keep them two from fighting, and one of them has a 2x4, and they're like hitting themselves in the head with it, like screaming and hollering. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on, like what's happening. My mom was standing at the truck, and she kept like pointing her finger at my dad, and she still points her finger till this day, but she just was pointing. And I remember my dad telling her, like, if you don't get your finger out of my face, I'm going to break it. Now, my dad was never an abusive person. He never put his hands on my mom ever, not a day in her life. And she can vouch for that. So he gets out of the truck and she's all in his face, and I'm in between them crying, like, stop, don't stop, like, just leave, go in the house. Like, I don't really know what all I was saying, but I just wanted them to stop arguing. I was crying and I felt like me crying was more important than you arguing, so just stop. I guess my mom pointed her finger one too many times and my dad pushed her. And my mom's a tiny woman and my dad was not a tiny man. I mean, he wasn't huge, but he was like built, like muscular built. So when he pushed my mom, she kind of like flew, like far. And then of course that pisses her off, so she gets up and she's like running after him, like trying to fight him, and I'm trying to stop her. And it was also crazy. I know my dad ended up getting in the truck, him and his brother, and they finally left. I don't really know if charges were pressed or if anything happened with that whole ordeal, but I just remember it all happening. And it's kind of sad because, like, why do parents act like that in front of their kids? Like, why do you let your children see those types of behavior? But, you know, can't change it now. It happened. I remember we were at my dad's house one weekend. Well, I was there, I guess, because my brother actually lived there. And I didn't really know what was going on with my mom at the time. I just know she popped up out of nowhere, and her boyfriend wasn't with her. But she shows up at my dad's house, and I knew it wasn't time for me to go back with her. But she was there, and it was just weird because I didn't understand why she was there. But she set us down on the couch, and she told us that she had to tell us something. And at that time, like, I didn't know what she was about to say. But she just kind of looked at us and was like, I'm pregnant. And obviously I was super excited, and it was, the way that she found out was not good. Her boyfriend and her had had some altercations, and she took a bunch of sleeping pills, and he ended up taking her to the hospital, and they had to pump her stomach, and that's how they found out she was pregnant. It wasn't later in life that I found out that that's how she found out she was pregnant. So I go back home with my mom, and my brother stays again. And we moved a lot. I couldn't even tell you how many times we moved as when I was a kid, because I don't even know. Between both parents, mom and dad, we moved a lot. But I remember we had moved into a trailer in Rehoboth, on Traffic Road, if I'm not mistaken. And my mom had a belly, and it was kind of cute because she's so tiny and she was just all belly. And I remember her and her boyfriend had gotten like this big argument, and he was yelling at her and he was screaming at her, and he was like throwing stuff and flipping chairs over, and I was scared. I didn't know what was happening or what was going on. So of course I'm stuck by my mama's side, and I'm crying and wondering what the hell is going on. And I watched this man grab my mother by her head and bang her head onto the counter numerous of times. And she was like 7-8 months pregnant. And I was screaming and crying, and I was trying to make him stop, but he wouldn't stop. And she was fighting back, and she was trying to get away, and it was crazy. Like, it was literally, it was heartbreaking. I remember trying to help her, and I remember being grabbed and thrown. And I was thrown right over top of a kerosene heater. And luckily I did not land on it, but I'll never forget that, ever. Not like, I know it's now like it's not important, but I just know like I'll never forget that happened to me. They ended up breaking up, but they got back together, and that happened a lot. We moved into an apartment on Nutbush Road in Victoria, and my mom was still pregnant, and I remember her, like, she just didn't feel right. She didn't feel good. There was something wrong. And this was August 5th, 2002, I think. Anyways, 2001. It was 01. And my mom and dad actually had a baby on August, well, they had him June 18th of 1988, 87. And he died August 5th of the same year. So for it to be August 5th, my mom wasn't happy anyways, but she just didn't feel right at the time. She knew there was something wrong, and so we didn't have a car. So she ended up calling someone, and they came and picked up me and her boyfriend. And they took us to South Hill Hospital. And I had to stay in the waiting room, obviously. I couldn't go in the back, but when they finally decided to let me go back, they had moved her to the maternity ward level of the hospital, and they told me, like, we're gonna have a baby. Like, we're not, like, this is it. Like, we're gonna have a baby. And I was crying, and I was excited, and I was happy, and I'm like, yay, like, this is gonna be fantastic. My mom had preeclampsia, so, like, her feet and ankles and legs were just, like, really swollen, and they shouldn't have been as bad as they were. And the doctors told her that if she would have went to sleep that night, she probably wouldn't have woken up. So, my mom actually was not happy that she was having the baby right then, because it was August 5th, and she did not want to have her child on the same day that she lost one. So, they ended up doing an emergency C-section, and they pulled my sister out at 12:01 a.m. on August 6th. And I remember them bringing her to the window, and I remember her screaming and crying, and I just remember looking at her, and she was just so tiny, and she had, like, red hair, and I was so excited because